U.S. Over a fairly long period of time, and we assume that this debate will go on, and it, of course, will heat up with the new machinations involving the new Congress that'll come up next year. And also on the energy front, the Keystone Pipeline is coming in there. It passed the House, going to the Senate. So we'll see much about energy, but the action on energy, one should look to OPEC and their meeting, and it's just a simple situation. There's just more petroleum product out in the pipelines, and there are customers to consume it. So as long as that is a factor, you can bet that the prices will remain rather low out there. So let's jump and do those numbers. We'll finally get to them and see where the markets are. We've spent a little time on the crude, but we'll go to these various markets around. We like to do this to see exactly where we are in the scheme of things. Well, the BBC Global 30 is at 0.72%, or $56.25. The FTSE, 18.92. In Amsterdam, they're at 0.56. In Frankfurt, the DAC, 4.43. In Paris, 14.51, a little improvement in France in the economy there. In Brussels, 1.02. In Madrid, 7.60. And it couldn't hold last. In Zurich, 39.09. In Moscow on Friday, these are all Friday incidentally, unless otherwise noted, was 8.47. In Bombay, 106.02. In Karachi, they were down 87.87. In Lahore, also 71.99 in the negative. In Colombo, 21.40. And in Tehran on Wednesday, 118.60 in the negative. In Sydney, 10.30. The Nikkei, 98.004. The Hang Seng in Hong Kong at 67.44. In Shanghai, they were down 6.78. In New York, they were also down 18.01. The Nasdaq was 8.40. The Merc out in the city of Chicago, 0.49, the commodities market. In San Pablo, 73.63 in the negative, and in Mexico, 371.79 in the negative also. And it's to note that Mexico is also in the energy producing business and to the commodities. Brent crude futures, $79.65. They were actually up $2.16. The spot at 79.43 was up 48 cents. More realistic here, the intermediate crude at $75.98, and it was also up $1.66. T-Boone Pickin is still jumping for joy there. He remembers $15 a barrel oil, and this is just, as they say, a forte here. But we do need to get these prices down. Gold, another commodity that we have been suspicious of for many years, was down $7 at $1,154. That's from the Forex. We don't get to Dubai here anymore. Check on Dubai. And corn futures were down $4.50 at $381.75. Soybeans were up 13 cents. Soybean oil futures Soybean futures, this is at the old bushel, down $31 there. Need to get those down too. Cocoa was down $7 there, and coffee was down $1. And this does it for commodities. Hopefully we've shed some light on energy pricing. This will do it for us. For those in business, make next week a productive one. And for the consumer, keep your eye on the ball. Many of these retail outlets will be open before Turkey Day, as we say here in North America, or at least in the U.S. Canadian Thanksgiving Day is a separate situation. But they will open before that day. They used to open after the day, which is traditionally on a Thursday, so they have a Friday. Now they no longer have that, so it's up. Some of them actually are running deals right now, and the deals will get better depending upon the foot traffic. Good day.
I think there's going to be an argument made, hopefully, for moving back towards the right Pauli-like solution. I think there's going to be an argument made, hopefully, for moving back towards the right Pauli-like solution, and hopefully we'll get there. Mark made a couple of comments that I do want to take issue with. One about transparency of financing, and the other is about moving from community rating to risk-rated subsidies. It's just you can't do it politically. You just literally cannot do it. Okay, transparent financing. Unless I have transparent financing, also transparent spending. I mean, this bill was written in a tortured way to make sure CBO did not score the mandate as taxes. If CBO scored the mandate as taxes, the bill dies. Okay, so it's written to do that. In terms of risk-rated subsidies, if you had a law which said healthy people are going to pay in, it made explicit that healthy people pay in and sick people get money, it would not have passed. Okay, just like lack of transparency is a huge political advantage. And basically, call it the stupidity of the American voter or whatever. But basically, that was really, really critical to get anything to pass. And, it's the second best argument. Look, I wish Mark was right. We can make it all transparent. But I'd rather have this law than not. So it's kind of like his reporter story. There's things I wish I could change, but I'd rather have this law than not. And I think that involves some trade-offs that, we don't prefer as academic economists, but which are realistic. Let's talk also a little about Oregon. So I was one of the co-conspirators in the Oregon study. Two comments on the Oregon study. First of all, I think that there is no perfect economic study. And you have to put this in the context of a large literature which does show positive health benefits of expanding insurance, including studies that have been done in Massachusetts law, which has shown large health benefits of expanding insurance in Massachusetts, as well as all the Medicaid research that I did a long time ago and others have done. So I think this is a worrisome finding in that sense, but it does not mean we know the answer is no health effects. It just means, we're a little more uncertain than... I basically view it as raising our confidence intervals from where we were. The second thing is, and I just can't emphasize this enough, we did find huge mental health effects. And mental health is health. Okay? We tend to focus on kind of it's heart attacks or nothing. That's not true. Okay? Mental health matters. Now, Mark's right. It's not clear that the right way to get to mental health is through health insurance. A lot of this wasn't Prozac. This was ending the stress people lived under. There was a 30% drop in depression. 30%. And that wasn't more Prozac. That was the fact these uninsured people lead horribly stressful lives. And we found enormous increase in happiness, enormous reductions in depression. And I think as economists, we need to broaden our concept of what insurance is about. Now, Mark is right. Once we do that, we then have to stack up insurance against other things which could have these effects. And that's fine. Let's run that. Let's run that race. But I think the fact it doesn't, and once again, we can have confidence intervals and other things. But just in general, the fact that it didn't find effects on physical health, people tend to extrapolate and say there's no effect on health. That's not true. There was huge effects on mental health, and that matters. Okay, so I think we have to keep that in mind when we discuss the Oregon effects. In terms of other changes to the law and things to keep an eye on, okay, some more sort of smaller stuff to keep an eye on. One, so I talked about the Cadillac tax, talked about the mandate. Another thing to keep an eye on is actually, once again, another political constraint. The way the law works is the subsidies people pay as a percent of income. The percent of income they pay actually ramps up over time. Basically, it's complicated, but percent of income you pay is indexed. Essentially, the percent of income you pay grows with the gap between healthcare cost growth and income growth. So if healthcare costs grow at the rate of GDP, then people at the top always pay 9.5% of their income to get subsidies, people 3 to 4 times poverty. But if the rate of healthcare cost growth exceeds GDP growth, that percent of income you pay grows. So it could be, under current projections, by 10 or 15 years from now, people aren't paying 9.5% of their income. They're paying 17% of their income. Okay, so that's sort of a bit of a time bomb hidden in this law. Now at the same time, Cadillac's tax revenues will grow enormously if that happens. So we could take that money and use it to solve this problem, but that is something to keep an eye on. The second thing to keep an eye on is cost-sharing subsidies. So low-income people, there's two forms of subsidies. There's subsidies to pay a fixed percent of income, and there's subsidies to sort of buy down your cost-sharing if you're low income. Those are very nice if you're below about 150% of poverty. They're not nearly generous enough between 150 and 300% of poverty. You're going to have people at 2 and 2.5 times poverty in $3,000 deductible plans. That's 10% of their income plus. That could be an issue, and that's something we have to keep an eye on. Another example of the horrible features of our current political system, in the law is this bizarre feature that for small businesses only, the maximum deductible is set to $2,000. Not for people, not for large businesses. Why is this? It's because Olympia Snow staffer was an idiot. And Olympia Snow staffer saw that in Massachusetts we'd done this. He said this is the national law. And Obama was desperate to have a Republican on the law. So he said, well, if it'll make Olympia Snow happy, let's put it in the bill, we'll get rid of it in conference. Well, in conference never happened, so the law actually features this weird glitch that for only small businesses, the deductible is limited to $2,000. Not indexed, just $2,000. Well, everyone agrees that's a bad idea, left and right alike, but you can't reopen the law, so we can't get rid of it. That's the kind of thing that we just need to get rid of, and hopefully someday we'll live in a political environment that we can do something like that. And then I think Mark's entirely right about the employer mandate. That was just political cover. I mean, it's a decent source of revenue raising. It's like $10 billion a year, so it's real money. But it really isn't central to the law. I think there's this unfortunate focus on what happens to employer-sponsored insurance. What happens to employer-sponsored insurance is irrelevant. Okay? What should matter is what happens to overall insurance coverage, and we shouldn't care where people get it from. And so I think the employer mandate, and I think there's a decent chance it may eventually go away, because I think it's a source of an enormous number of political problems with the law. Let me just end with a couple last things so we have to keep an eye on in terms of research thinking going forward. A bit of it self-serving. I think we need to really think about basically decision support within the exchanges. You know, we're entering a brand new world that started with Part D and is now extending the ACA of people making choices over their health insurance plans. And as Jason and I have shown in the context of Part D, and we're hoping to show in future research, or look at in future research in the context of broader health insurance, there's a potential for people to make bad choices or inconsistent choices. And the question is, can decision support play a role in mitigating that? I think that's a really important question. And more broadly, there's just the question of exchange design. Amanda Stark and Keith Erickson have this really neat paper showing that a more standardized exchange design in Massachusetts was welfare improving. What is the optimal exchange design? So one last sort of inside baseball story. In Massachusetts, we went to, as you know, you should all read their paper if you haven't, but we went to, after a couple of years, a standardized design where we sort of standardized the benefits. And people really liked it, and according to their paper, it was welfare improving. The problem was no small businesses were buying through the exchange. So we asked them why, and they said because the benefits were too standardized. They said you don't have all these funky options we like. So we actually have gone now for a mixed strategy, which is we have standardized benefits and another tier we call unstandardized. Kind of saying, look, if you want to take the chance of going unstandardized, go for it. We'll let you have that. But if you want to sort of not have to face those difficult decisions, we'll go standardized. Is that the right thing to do? Embarrassingly, I have no idea. So that's the kind of thing we need to be thinking more about. And then I think, the last thing I just emphasize is we need to be thinking more broadly, coming back to the Oregon results, health insurance in the context of overall well-being of our national enterprise. And that ultimately that's what we care about, is the well-being of our citizenry. And we have to think about that more broadly. And I think the Oregon results, along with Amy Finkelstein and Rob McKnight's results, showing that Medicare didn't seem to improve health, but massively improved financial security, make us think we have to think about what's the ultimate structure of the safety net that makes sense. And maybe Mark's right. Maybe it's not health insurance. Maybe it's just, as Avi Groy said, maybe it's just money and Prozac in the water. Maybe that's where we need to be. But we need to be thinking about sort of what's the ultimate structure of the social insurance enterprise. So let me stop there.
Thanks, John. Maybe I'll give Mark a chance to respond to John's comments, and then we'll have some questions.
So I actually agree with everything that John has said. It's easy for me to offer a sermonette on this subject at this stage of my career. I think, people with tenure should say what's right. And, of course, we're used to constrained optimization, so if the politicians tell us they can't do it, we can come up with something. But somewhere there ought to be the tablets of gold that say, community ratings a dumb idea, and other things. I guess one other thing I'll mention is a area in economics that didn't get into the bill's discussion as far as